Thanks for joining us today, guys. We're going to take you through how to deliver excellent IT services for your business and your customers. So just some housekeeping. We are recording this session and we will make it available for you at the end. You can turn on closed captions. The instructions are there on the screen. And we will have a Q&A session. So any questions that you have, feel free to pop them into the chat. You can do that anonymously, and then John and Stephen will answer them at the end. So our two speakers are John and Stephen. John is our head of customer experience and Stephen is our chief technology officer. And what they'll bring us through today, so John will look at the customer experience, how to provide excellent IT services. And Stephen will talk us through the technology and how we use automation and AI at Brennan IT to support our clients. Stephen will also then introduce you to the AI program at the end, the AI pilot program, which we're really excited about. So I'll hand you over to John now.
Thanks, Kira. Good morning, everyone. I'm John Bolchin, the customer experience head of at Brennan IT. Just quickly talking through to you why you need excellence in IT. Well, obviously we want to empower your people to do their best work. And we also need to provide that with flexibility and security required. And this is also becoming increasingly anywhere at any time. Customer experience, digital disruptions is here, and we actually believe the pace is accelerating. Your customers expect full technology and a service experience, and again, we believe as the younger generational trends continue to only increase. We also believe that AI is obviously the way that IT is moving forward. We believe it can save you time, money, resources by automating everyday business processes. So what does that look like in action? Well, I'm sure we're all across the recent IT challenges resulting from COVID and the work from home responses that took place in early March. I think a really good example. Brennan, along with our clients, were required to swiftly put in place several solutions to ramp up business-wide work from home responses. So as an example, we proactively built a task force that onboarded a whole bunch of VPN demand for our customers on our new Fortinet platform. And we actually pre-provisioned quite a few of our clients in order to accelerate that process. We also proactively reviewed their bandwidth requirements, etc., to cater for the changing client traffic demand. We directed additional resources to help facilitate the increase in load to ensure that our clients were getting services as fast as possible. So ability, agility, scale, etc., is also key to that. And the way you measure those outcomes is through NPS. So we actually use a NPS process to manage how all of our transactional and as well as our account level relationships are progressing. AI is also critical to move forward to deliver excellent IT. We've invested a lot of money in our IT platform, and we also have been delivering some really great outcomes, taking things that might have taken 5 days down to 5 minutes. So Stephen will talk you through that later on in the slide. So what's been our approach? How have we done it? We've always obviously had surveys, but we've actually embraced the NPS methodology since 2017. That's also been very, very close to measuring NPS and transactional pieces. But it's been very, very key. The entire business has embraced it. We've had a lot of internal processes to enable it. So we've been embedding ticket scores to get closure processes. Our engineers and account teams have had KPIs to make sure they're aligned with those NPS outcomes. We regularly review all of those scores every month, etc. We make sure that all of those NPS scores are actually presented back to our clients so you can see how your customers and your users are performing through our self-service portal. So now we've got the scores. What have we been doing with them? So we've changed some of our SLA metrics to deliver some better outcomes. We analyze every single detractor and internal escalation processes. We share those results with our engineers and their managers to take improvement activities. Those results have obviously driven some internal changes around the way we handle tickets, the way we manage queues, our resolve to close processes, internal handover processes, and some of those processes have then led to the way we change our onboarding processes for our engineering staff. It's changed the alignment between our quality and our training teams. But the number one change is we've changed away from hard metrics on tickets, such as a scorecard process. Did you do this ticket the right way according to a set guideline, to did you actually align with a customer-centric, the customer sentiment? We're making sure that what we're doing is aligned with what the customer outcome intent is for tickets. Out of that process, we learned a few things. So we've obviously had to review our VIP program. So we've now got a VIP program that's obviously we're passionate about delivering good outcomes for all of our clients, but we do recognise that there's a need at times for VIPs. There might be some of your senior people, your critical people, to get an additional level of service. So we've built a new program where you can self-service who those people are. Those people will be in control of their own tickets. They can invoke that program. And there's a team there ready to take that ticket and deliver a concierge-style service to make sure you get exceptional outcomes every time. And your IT teams can obviously manage who's on that VIP list. So what next? What are we doing at the moment? So we're looking at building some dynamic heat maps. And traditionally, the metrics that you would look at, greater service cost, how long it takes to pick up a phone call, for example, how long it takes to complete a ticket or update a ticket, etc. We're looking to take that a few steps forward, and I'll give you some examples. So at the moment, you've got a situation where a particular ticket might look green from your traditional thresholds, but we're now looking to integrate some of our NPS data and some of our ticket data, and we're looking at trying to find other things that might cause what we call detractors or negative sentiment, and that is how many pairs of hands did it travel through, how many different phone call or email interactions before a phone call might be required, maybe how long does a phone call go that's unsuccessful in nature, to enable our quality teams and our incident jeopardy teams to proactively seek out this ticket has got the hallmarks of a negative sentiment and get ahead of that ticket before it turns into a negative client outcome. Those new metrics will then obviously perform an extension to our traditional measure of service. So be more aligned to that customer experience, more aligned to the ticket handling attributes that deliver good outcomes. So what next? What's further down the line from a customer experience? So we're looking at building a customer experience guarantee logic. So we understand that the people are the backbone of your organisation. It's critical that those people have got technologies and systems and services that provide them connected and provide productivity. At the moment, we know that users obviously they're very passionate about their applications and the things that enable them to perform their role. We know most organisations have got things like Office 365, for example. We know that Office 365 there's some availability requirements, but also there might be some business critical applications as well that might actually be more important to your organisation than email, Word, Excel, etc. So we're moving some of our logic away from a standard ticket SLA model to an enhancement to what else can we do to get closer to the customer experience. How might this work? So we're looking to design a process that's aligned with your end users' expectations of IT. What applications or services do they deliver to deliver productive outcomes for your organisation? What tasks are your users performing so we can measure their experience? How to report and enable measurable outcomes as the managed service provider? So I'll walk you through some examples now of what that might look like. How will it work? So in addition to the traditional style of availability monitoring, Office 365 tenancy, we'd look to provide some additional measurements of the tools that your team use and try to map those critical business applications to the services and the end user measurable outcomes. So that might be, for example, how is your team's voice performing? What kind of error rate are we expecting to see that provides good service? If we breach that number, we'd log a ticket for you. Or maybe you're logging into Office 365 and it's taking a certain amount of time to download a file. Well, we might log a ticket for you based on the time that piece is taking to actually execute. The time to open Outlook, maybe you've got some form of corruption, or maybe there's some kind of performance challenge on a particular laptop. You might log a proactive ticket so that if it's exceeding a particular timeline. What we're attempting to do is to get as close as we can to the customer experience, close as we can to that day-to-day transactional piece that they rely on their IT to be able to deliver a good piece of work for their organisation and be as productive as possible at all times. And before I hand over to Stephen, just a quick reminder, don't forget to submit your questions. Over to Stephen, thank you.
Hi guys, Steve Dangerfield, CTO here. I've continued my COVID tradition of guess the movie in the background, so you can bash that in as a question and I'll let you know the answer at the end. I want to talk a bit about how we're using technology to support the customer experience, and to remember that, you know, the technology side, it needs to be done in combination with the initiatives that John are doing. But what I'm trying to do is give you the best practice, so that if you want to achieve this yourself, this is the kind of things that you'll have to go through. So our particular journey began 2 years ago, you know, and we had masses of technical debt, and we kicked off some self-service automation around new user creation, staff offboarding, password reset, that type of thing, and it's now handling thousands of tickets a month. So we're actually got a fair amount of adoption of this, but we realised very quickly we had to go and clear all the technical debt and upgrade all the systems that didn't have APIs. And we're now moving into the area where we want to combine the AI and the automation and move it to self-service. Two people have guessed it already. And then I want to talk about the maturity model, and I call it the ITIL and the AI Ops maturity model. And one of the things that we had as a benefit is we're quite mature in ITIL, but you have to get the ITIL pieces right. So the core of that obviously is your CMDB and services, so you can associate an event or something that happened with a specific device, location and service. That's the foundations. The next thing after that is event. What we found is, out of the box, most of the vendors only integrate with incident when they bring it into your core ITSM platform. And that's the change that you've got to make. You don't want to be only gathering the data that represents the system, like node down. You want to be gathering all the information for your AI as it comes out of the system, consolidating it and being able to draw conclusions from it. And 9 times out of 10, when I want to ask people how mature their ITIL processes are, I ask them, you know, talk to me about your event management for non-security events. And then finally, correlation. That's big for us because we're whole of business. So the examples there is that Telstra failure at a site, and then SCOM much higher up the stack is going to throw a whole load of alerts because it can't see the server. And when you scale that out across cloud infrastructure, networking, etc., the ability to correlate is also fundamental to reduce the noise. You know, AI can help make inroads here, but most of the time it's just trying to fight its way through the noise. So being able to correlate properly is the final part of the maturity before you move on to the exciting stuff, which is the artificial intelligence. So the first thing, just as a caveat, I use the word AI and machine learning. I just call it AI. It's easier because otherwise people try and draw a distinction. But operational analysis, and that's where you're analysing things in the background to get root cause, but more importantly, patterns. So you're trying to see, by analysing all your tickets and the devices that are affected in the environments, you're trying to come up with operational improvements. And it might be this firmware needs to be upgraded. It's very expensive compared to other firmwares, but it can be a whole host of other examples of things that we say just before we see this outage, these are the things that are happening in the environment. And these things currently bubble up into predominantly problem management, but over time we're going to start bubbling them up into helping the actual agents who are on the ground, which is the final bit. So obviously we call it, the term AI Ops is a bit like cloud was 10 years ago. You know, it means a lot of things. For our interpretation, it's using AI and automated remediation to assist or provide accurate resolution of incidents. So the key thing here is what you do with the AI. How do you use the AI to improve the service that you give your customers? And it's really a 3-step continual improvement. So the first thing you want to do is you want to deflect as many tickets as possible. And what do I mean by a deflection? That means where the automation can handle the transaction. And the examples of what we've got live today is when we see a disk space alert. Initially we logged on and cleared the temp files, but that We realized also we could clear the log files, and so over time you're gradually improving the intervention or deflection that the AI does, and that prevents a ticket from hitting a human. And we've clearing backups is another one. If you can't deflect the ticket, then you move on to what we call agent AI assistance. And what that'll be is where the AI will prompt previous resolutions, or even it will enrich the ticket for both the resolver, whether it's an agent or an engineer, but also for the AI analysis. So it'll review previous resolutions, automate level 1 triage, and even grab the event logs from the particular PC, because that's one of the first troubleshooting steps that the engineer does. But more importantly, you can then feed that into the AI training, and I'll give you an example of that, which we call Event 68. So after the agents resolved the ticket and closed it, it's then off for the AI training phase, where they analyze all of the, not just the ticket, but also the voice call. So we'll transcode that to text. And that really gives you the information that isn't available in the ticket. And that's probably one of the big steps forward, which is, when you point your AI just at your ticket comments, you're not really going to get the customer's intent or even the resolution or the problem. And they're the three key things that you need to be able to get the AI to understand, which is the first one is, what was the customer's intent in calling you? The other one is, what did we do to fix it, and was it permanent? And then the AI can gather that and promote more things in to go into the deflection stage. So what are the benefits? Well, they fall in two halves. For your IT team, you can see some massive things if you follow this all the way, from the event, the correlation, and the AI automated deflection. We've actually managed to get a 60% reduction in incidents over 6 months, pushing this really, really hard. We've had a 25% improvement overall in what we call mean time to resolve elapsed. And then the rework on automation, that's worked out to be perfect. It's software. The only real rework is when the environment has an issue rather than the software. And then the key benefit is that you're freeing up your engineers and your agents to focus on higher value tasks. So instead of them having to tackle a machine that's out of disk space, they can go and work on the problems or changes or projects. Yeah. What are the benefits for your end users? So as an IT department, or in our case, a service provider, to your customers, this is the changes here, they're multiples, they're not just small percentages. So as John alluded to, for the real low priority tasks, we would we'd have an SLA up to 5 days. They've gone down to 5 minutes. And so as long as someone's either using the self-service or we can intervene with the AI, we can get that, whether an incident or request closed and the shift has been from 5 days to 5 minutes. Likewise, we're automating provisioning, starting with Teams, and we've moved from 30 days to 30 hours. So these are real transformational shifts in the outcome for your end user. And then, of course, there's improvements in NPS because it's consistent and it's quick. And it's also, because it's consistent, led to a big reduction in detractors on the stuff we've been able to automate. Then the other key piece of the jigsaw is your call center, and what we call the AI-enabled call center. And it's interesting that, when I talk to most IT departments, the PABX that they use for the help desk is probably the biggest area of technical debt, and yet it's the most important window you have into your end users. And so this is why we realize this is a key part of any modern future MS solution. So the first thing is, it's got to be what retailers would call omni-channel. So yeah, sure, we do email, sure, we do phone calls, but you want to have some way of engaging via mobile, via a website, using web chat, via SMS, and via relevant social channels. So as a B2B provider, our social channel is Teams, and we're currently mapping out how we can engage with people inside their Teams channel, but it might be Facebook or WhatsApp, depending on your business. And then the core components of it is the AI-driven self-service. So we're able to use voice AI bots in the call center, and they're able to bring the self-services that are on the website and make them usable inside the call center. So all of a sudden, for the people who won't go to the website, we can actually bring the automations that we've already built to them inside the call center, and they'll try and handle the call, and if they can't, they'll hand it over to an agent, but with a lot more context and also a lot more of the initial troubleshooting and triage information that's actually available. You know, when someone calls in, we've got their mobile number, we know them, we look them up in the CMDB, we instantly get their devices, whether it's their PCs from SCCM or their mobiles from Intune, and you can actually go and grab all the information about those environments and hand that to the agent as you give them the ticket. And they're the kind of things that really improve the customer outcomes and the speed of which you can service your customers. On the agent side, they get to be able to work on multiple tickets or chats at once, and the AI still has this contextual search where it'll prompt the right result for them, whether that's knowledge, whether that's a previous ticket that's identical. And for us personally, it combines the benefits of Amazon and ServiceNow. We use ServiceNow. I'm comfortable that you could achieve similar outcomes with modern ITSM platforms, but you'd be developing a whole load more for the things that are out of the box. And so that gives us what we call predictive intelligence, which is the bit that prompts, whether it's Bickies, but you can even use third-party databases like TechNet to aid the agent to provide the correct resolution. On the AWS side, out of the box, we get the call recording and transcoding. And that's the revolutionary bit in this, which is if you've got bad or missing data and you feed that into the AI, it will get there, but it won't be as accurate and it will take longer. So the more you can pump the AI with information, particularly accurate information, the much faster you'll get. Coverage from the AI is one of the things, and the other one is accuracy. So you could have 100% accuracy with 3% coverage, or 3% accuracy with 100% coverage. But what will happen is, by giving it all the information, such as all the words that are said inside the call, the AI produces much better results around understanding what was the customer problem and also what was the thing the agent did to fix it. As I said, we'll integrate with customers' Teams channels where they can go at Brennan for support. We've seen that Teams and COVID, Teams has become a primary business channel, and so it has to be a part of any of your strategies if you're going to offer a modern ITSM service to people. And then finally, the other one that's exciting for us, and I know for John, is real-time sentiment. So the AI can work out by what they're saying, even by their tone of voice, have you got a really angry customer? And that gives John and his team the capability to intervene, escalate, or actually react in real time to angry customers as they are engaging with us on the call center. Yeah. So the other thing as well is the feedback. So feedback for us, we're 100% NPS as a company, all staff, all departments. So getting that interactive feedback about not just the experience, but also the AI experience, will capture the real-time CSAT and NPS. Voice AI, that's a personal thing that I think needs to be in everyone's strategy. From my perspective, the only question is, in 15 years, will voice be the primary interface or the only interface, excluding accessibility topics? And the advancements that have been made here are pretty incredible, and they're being made even more every month. And so we're committing to this. It's one of the reasons why we've got the Voice AI pilot. And we see three main opportunities around this. So the first one that we see is removal of dead time in the call wait queue. So I got a parking fine the other day and phoned whatever help desk handles parking fines in Victoria. 55 minutes I was on that call. And all the time I was on the call, it was saying, do you know you can go to our website and do this? And I think that's where we think the opportunity is, which is, if you're facing a long wait in a call center, would you engage with AI rather than the human? And that's what we're testing out at the moment. And the initial pilot so far is generating really good results. But the second thing is the point that I think is probably more relevant to most customers, and that's we built self-service portals. We've been quite good with adoption. It's slower than we wanted, but it's quite good now with the IT manager that is our key contact. But when you want to get out to end users, that's where you've really got to work. So the attraction of this is all these people, and next time you're in a call center wait queue, count how many times they say, did you know if you go to our website you can self-service this. Everyone's the same. Using the voice AI allows us to bring all those existing investments. We're not developing anything new, but engage with the customer in the call center, because they're obviously not going to the website. It's why they called you. They might be in the car, they might not like it, but basically, if I learnt the website interface for all the 300 people I had to engage with, that gets difficult for end users. And why do they do it? The other thing is, we don't see this as big for us, but it allows you to engage people in the office or the home via Alexa. Other AI personal assistants are available. Obviously, if you're B2C, that's an important channel for you, but the key one we're working on at the moment is voice AI inside the call center, and we may look at, how do we use it within the office if we think that's culturally going to be adopted. And then finally, the other thing is the level of data that it gives the AI. When I looked at the tickets, we started analyzing them. You'll have some categories, subcategories, you might have a closure comment. What happens now is we actually get the text of every single word that's said and can feed that into the AI for both real-time or post-call sentiment, but also it really gives us a chance to understand what was the intent, why did the customer call us, and what did we do to fix it. And that was the big leap forward insofar as how much coverage and accuracy we were able to start seeing. So we've got a bit of a roadmap. I should probably call this next steps, in that the first 4 we've all actually done, and we've launched in some form into production. And then I'll spend a little bit of time about where we see the goal, and where we're most excited. So the first one is informational AI. That's out of the box. Wherever you go, someone will go, look, here's an FAQ or knowledge base, sort it out yourself. And so from a customer experience, this isn't, if we look at Uber Eats, this isn't pizza delivery or pizza collection. This is, here's a recipe, go and buy your ingredients and cook it yourself. So it's real right at the bottom of the customer experience value chain, but it's very easy and it's out of the box for people. The next one after informational AI obviously is AI assistance, and what that says is, if I can't give you the information you need, well, I'll give it to a member of staff and they can resolve your thing quicker. So it's a better experience, but it's still pretty low value. The next one in the chain is what I call reactive automated remediation. And so from the, what does this do for your end user? Well, it's, we're automatically fixing your problem when you tell us. So this is much higher value. We're actually providing an outcome rather than, turning around and saying, here's an FAQ, sort it out yourself. And so coming back to the pizza analogy, this is the pizza collection. If you dial our call center or go to our website, we will fix your problem automatically. After we've got past fixing your problems, we move up the chain again, and we're talking about reactive automated fulfillment. And what we're talking about there is, let me offboard a staff member in seconds, but we're actually saying, look, we'll fix it automatically for things you want rather than things that are broken. And none of those really are groundbreaking, and they suffer, I think, from the problem of being reactive. And so I spoke earlier about Event 68. So one of the things we found when we were capturing logs is every time we see Outlook Event 68, we know their profile's corrupt. We know they're going to call, and we know that the agent is going to rebuild their Outlook profile. And so the key thing, if you want to cue the number 5, is the panacea that we're heading for is proactive. And so we know that their Outlook's gone. We know it's corrupt, and we know it's got to be rebuilt. Why do we wait for them to call us? If I know all this, shouldn't I just contact the user and say, I know your Outlook's not working. Can I rebuild it? Or one of the other approaches would be just don't even call them and rebuild it for them anyway. And they're the areas that we're starting to explore in the pilots, which is, what's the appetite from various demographics around, interacting either with someone reaching out to you, which is a potential disturbance, or how about even an AI reaching out to you? How weird would that be? And that's the area that we're heading towards as Brennan. But I think if you get the first 4, you're definitely in the best practice area. Obviously, want to give a quick demo, loads of caveats. Demoing voice is actually quite difficult, and unfortunately I didn't have a recording studio, so it was a little bit, there's a little bit of echo, and as a dev system there's a bit of a delay, but hopefully this will make the concept tangible. Yeah.
I've got my Teams DDI registered to me, as well as my mobile, so some Teams just as well on the mobile.
Hi, Stephen. I'm Megan. Welcome to the AI Assisted Support Center. Please be aware that internet at the Melbourne office is running slow. Engineers are already investigating. If that is the reason for your call, just hang up and we'll send you a text when the service is fixed. How can I help? Should I reset your password or transfer you to an agent?
Reset my password.
A link to reset your password has been sent to you by SMS. Thanks for calling. Have a nice day.
So you missed it, unfortunately. I don't know, or maybe it got chopped. I had wanted to pre-register everyone as mobile, so that demo you could all call in and actually talk to the AI yourself, but we didn't ask for consent. So at the end, when you reach out, if you want to be able to engage with the AI and test it, and, make sure it's real, just let the marketing people know that they'll register you your mobile, and then we'll give you the number and you can call it. So that brings us nicely onto the AI pilot program. So I'm looking for other people who also believe that in 10 to 15 years, voice will be the primary interface. That's an area that your business is going. I'd love to talk to you, and I'd like to do a pilot. So what do we mean by that? We'll build you a voice AI bot for a high volume call center transaction, exactly like password reset. We'll give you people access to it via a pilot number, and all we're asking is we want some feedback. We want to understand how do they feel about the AI, how do they feel about the transaction, and at the end of it, you can keep it. It's just an IVR. You can stick it in front of your call center or not. You'll just have to pay your own AWS fees. But what are the details? So really, we're looking for someone who's prepared to get staff to commit 30 to 40 hours total. Across 10 hour staff, that's 3 each. There's no cost. Obviously, we expect you've got to be using Office 365, and we'll probably need some permissions. We'll talk you through some detail, and there is limited availability. I can't do 10 of these, so it's first come, first served. And how do you apply? Well, you will receive an email post the webinar with a register your interest link. Cool. That's it from me. Over to you, Kira.
Okay, well, thanks very much for that, guys. Thanks for taking us through the presentation. We hope everybody found it really informative. We do have a few questions that have come in. Keep on posting them into the chat box there as we talk through them. But the first question, we've got one here, John, for you around NPS. And the user's just wondering, what was the impact on decision making in your business? Like, at Brennan, how does NPS feedback impact how we make decisions?
It's a good question. So some of the NPS, obviously NPS is designed to capture not just the good, but also the bad feedback. So when I say the bad feedback, it goes into a process where we try to put all of the customer sentiment into classification. So, for example, it might be you took too long to resolve, or the client perception is it could be done faster. So we try to find out why is the client saying that. Sometimes they're right. Sometimes we could have done things faster. Other times it might be the way that we're messaging that particular ticket. So we analyse how those tickets are presented to us, and we put some processes in place to say, hey, that process is not working very well because the time it takes to get from a team lead queue to, for example, to an engineer's queue. So that's an example of a process improvement put in place. Or we're not being very effective in communicating to our end users around when they can expect to hear from us or when this thing actually should be fixed. So we change the email templates to be clear on what the expectations are in that particular ticket. And also they made it very clear, and here's an escalation process you can follow if you need that thing to be done faster. So that's an example. Another example might be the way that we've been doing resolve and close tickets. So we're actually working through that process at the moment. That's actually something we're actually quite active on. We can see there's an opportunity for us to improve in that space. So every time we get one of these detractors come through, we look at it, we try to understand what's the root cause of the client sentiment and these issues. We put them into, I guess, themes, and then we determine, okay, we've got a few of these themes are starting to get some volume behind them. Then what's the root cause of that volume? And then sometimes it's the training programs, sometimes it's the process improvement, sometimes it's the way we communicate. So we do try to get to the root cause of the sentiment to try and put those improvements in place.
Great, thanks for that. Stephen, a question for you on the AI training that you mentioned. Are we good to go on that? Is it available as we speak?
Yeah, so there's probably two levels here. We're currently live and using what comes out of the boxes with ServiceNow, which looks at things like the ticket commentary and the categories and previous resolutions. The area we're working on, and actually we're working with ServiceNow's team on, is gathering lots more of the environmental things. And the bit that's most exciting, but it's still in the lab, is when we're transcoding the calls. So this started off as an exercise to say, well, our categories and subcategories aren't brilliantly accurate. Sometimes they're right. Sometimes the agent or the engineer doesn't really give us the right categories and subcategories. And so we started to use, it's actually machine learning, not AI for the purists, to examine the tickets and say, can I work out the category and subcategory? And this is when we realized that the ticket analysis compared to the analyzing the call recordings as text just was chalk and cheese in the outcome that they gave. So some of it's out of the box from ServiceNow, but we're also supplementing that with, as it happens, Power BI we're using to provide a hell of a lot more around analysing the event logs that occurred just before the ticket. So yeah, it's available now on the category and subcategories, and we're anticipating the event stuff will move out of the labs into the production early next year.
Great, and I'll come with you as well. We have a question here around change management. So the user is wondering how we go about implementing our updates and making all the changes. What's the process to make sure there's minimal or no disruption?
Okay, I'll answer half of that and possibly might hand over to John. So from the technology perspective, we're big on pilots. So we'll pilot something in parallel to production and then look at gradually implementing it. It's interesting when NPS is your lifeblood, so you can't introduce anything that does negative NPS. If we get a detractor, it goes in the CEO's inbox and he'll call you. So we're very careful about how we introduce change, but also particularly when it's a technology change like this, it'll go through a long pilot program with multiple customers. That's why we're doing the pilot on the back of this, way before we'll ever go and stick it in production, where we might introduce Betty in finance might hate it. We've noticed things between historically between MPS in Queensland and New South Wales. So there's a lot of things that you have to be careful about when you're walking the tightrope that we do. But the key answer is pilots, and they'll be for 3 to 6 months. And then the actual introduction is change control, which I can, John can talk you through, but we're very thorough on our change control.
I can talk to change control briefly from a cab perspective. So we obviously have a cab that we run every week. That cab process, obviously, typically engineers and sometimes process comes into that cab forum, and that cab forum, the relevant stakeholder, they produce their need justification, rollback plan, all those kind of things you talk about in cabs, and it goes through a formal approval process. So there's typically a technical peer review, what is the thing that you're doing, is a line of code okay, all that kind of stuff. But then it comes into more of a business context approval process. So what's the risk profile? What kind of communication plan do we internally within our internal audits? What kind of client-facing planned event notification needs to go out to our customers, and how do we communicate that risk profile, whether there's a known outage window with known duration, or is this a hazardous event style activity? So those pieces are covered off in the cab as well.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. I think this is probably the last question. If anybody has anything else to add in, just pop it in now. But the last question probably goes across both of the practices. The user is asking us, when we decide to start the new way of doing business, how long did the implementation take, and what were the steps like in terms of timeframes?
Yeah. I'll take that, John, and then I'll hand over. It's funny because I saw the question and I answered it, and I thought, wow, okay. This will sound difficult, but it took us 2 days to do the proof of concept, and I'll walk you through that. So we understood how we're quite agile as a company, but particularly as the transformation team. So we set aside 2 days for a hackathon, and we said, let's take this voice AI, which looks really ready, and push it as far as we can around the ITSM channel. And so we were able to get together the proof of concept on the rebuild Outlook profile, but not just detecting it, actually jumping on the machine and rebuilding it. We did another one which was called heavy load. So when the user called in, we scanned their PC and realized that an artificial program we called heavy load. So the AI engaged the end user and it said, I've noticed you've got the process heavy load running on your PC. Are you okay if I terminate it? And so the AI would then terminate that, and the user's machine would be restored, obviously with the password reset. And just in those 2 days, I've got an R&D team, with them in the labs, we realised that this beautiful trinity that we've got on our technology platform, which is AWS Service Now, and our capabilities around Lex and Alexa. We realised then that this stuff is not going to be expensive. The hard part about this isn't the actual time or investment we've got to make in the AI. The hard part of this is going to be the cultural side, and that's the area why we're doing so many pilots and I'm reaching out, which is how do we get people so they're not put off by the AI? And this is where we landed on that call centre wait queue, because I sat there for 55 minutes with Fines Victoria going, God, is there another way? So we're excited about it. It's very cheap. Obviously, that was in the labs. Moving that into production is much bigger investment than the 2 days. But is this the direction we should go and invest in? That was literally that 2-day hackathon.
Okay, great. Stephen, there was 3 correct responses to your movie quiz that came up, which is great.
Do you want to give him a prize, Mark?
Well, the prize is that we will be sending everybody through the recording of this session, which is great. But in that email, just keep an eye out because it does have the link to register for the AI pilot program. So just pop your details in there, and one of our team will be in contact with you, and we'll go through all the details.
And please provide your mobile and say, please register for the AI demo, and we'll set you up for that as well.
Okay, great. All right, well, thanks very much to the two guys for today, and thanks everybody for joining. We'll leave it there.